So I've had all these people whispering to me that I didn't introduce myself at the very beginning. So I am Reverend DeeAnn Morency. I am the minister here for those who are watching and here for the very first time. Oh, wouldn't this be amazing if we could live in this energy every moment? I mean, really just think about that. The exuberance, the clarity, the courage, the bravery, that we can stand in this space, this place. And it doesn't matter, I mean, yes, we're celebrating Pride, and I am absolutely going to be talking about LGBTQ+, and because it's so important, because this type of container, spiritual community, is all too often not supportive of the LGBTQ+ community. And that it, to me, is even more important that we, as a truly inclusive community, stand and shout it from the rooftops. Yes. Right? Yes. That there is a space, there is a place where if you feel other, if you feel as if some aspect of who you were born to be is not welcomed, is not seen, is not appreciated, that there is a place, a space where you can come and you literally can be seen. And there is nothing more healing than that, ever. So when I think about gay pride, and it's so funny because Elizabeth and I clearly were resonating on the same wavelength, though we did not communicate at all, I swear. But when I think of pride, what I think about is resilience. I think about the fact that that is what I stand in my pride for the resilience that is this community, for the resilience that I know is within me, that enabled me to feel brave enough to say, this is me. And there are so many voices out there that want to drown us out. There are so many words out there that want to cut us to the quick. And if you grew up in a more traditional community, the big one you probably heard was abomination. And I want to take that word right now, and I just want to take the sting out of it, right? Because that word spoken to me when I was figuring myself out spiraled me into a space of shame, right? Deep shame. That somehow, how I was born, who I was called to be, and in my understanding, like made in the image and likeness, and yet I was being told that God itself thought of me as an abomination. And it took me a long time to move through that it really wasn't God that thought I was an abomination. And anybody out there who is feeling the power of that word reverberating through them, and you don't have to be LGBTQ+ to feel the power of that word. It is the small minds of people who are terrified with change, who are terrified about anything that seems new, anything that seems to be breaking free from limitations, because that is what the LGBTQ+ community stands for. We are a community that is grounded in infinite possibility, that anything is possible. I was born just after Stonewall. Just before Stonewall, right? So in my lifetime, we went from Stonewall to gay marriage, which is amazing to think about. We have made such leaps forward, and yet the Equalities Act is struggling to get through Congress. There are more anti-trans bills, 250 bills that are anti-LGBTQ+ right now in Congress. Half of those are targeting trans. That is the next frontier. in growth, in expansion, in true awareness of anything is possible. And that's what we're all being invited to stand as. We're all being invited to stand in the place where we know who we are, but we also can hold and anchor in solidarity who everyone else is. And this community, the LGBTQ plus community, does this better because we're dealing with shame, which means that we feel trapped and we feel powerless and we feel isolated. That's what shame does to us. And resilience actually is about feeling connection, feeling empathy, feeling freedom and power like we all experienced in that song, This Is Me, in that song, Born This Way. And we come together in community and we connect. And we're able to actually stand and see each other. We get to share our stories. So it was 1983. I'm dating myself. 87, sorry. I'm trying to make myself older than I am. It's 1987. And for the first time ever, the AIDS Memorial Quilt was being displayed in Washington, D.C. And there was a gay, so this tells you how far we've come. It was called the Gay and Lesbian Rights Parade, happened in 1979, and there were about 100,000 people that attended. And then this one happened in 87, and 500,000 people descended on Washington, D.C. Now, those numbers may not sound like much now because we're so used to having greater numbers, because this act of protest was not the norm. It now is, primarily because guess who led the way? The LGBTQ community and the Black Civil Rights Movement, saying we are going to march, we are going to be a voice, you have to pay attention to us. And I distinctly remember walking with my best friend from high school, DeeAnn, who was also gay, and I was not out yet. And we were walking down through the parade, and we got to the point in the parade where there's always an area where they section it off and they allow the anti-gay protesters to gather. And they're congregated in one spot, which has its pluses because you only deal with them once, but whew, is it concentrated. So there must have been 150 of them with megaphones and signs saying literally things like, God hates you. And DeeAnn and I happened to time up in that moment with none other than the San Francisco Gay Men's Choir, who was marching in the parade. And they started to sing Amazing Grace. And it was like this bubble of beauty and gorgeous sound and love. Like it was in the very air that was being breathed. And it was so surreal because I could see the hate. It was like I was in a movie, you know, when you can see the silent people gesturing in slow motion with their angry faces and shouting things. And I was just in this gorgeous, beautiful space of grace that we created ourselves. That's the thing. We created that space. We created it out of a desire for ourselves to know freedom. We created it out of a desire for our fellow people, whoever is struggling, to also know freedom. There was a larger agenda. What this community does so beautifully is shame resilience. It's built into who we are, that we recognize that we're vulnerable, that we're alone in this experience, that we feel vulnerable being the only gay person in our small town, being the only gay person in our church, being the only queer person who is actually anywhere to be seen. So we get to recognize that vulnerability, and then we get to recognize the external situation that is supporting these feelings of shame. The most extreme example are those people standing on the curb with megaphones screaming to me that God hates me and that I should turn to Jesus. And the irony of that has never left me, that they are screaming hate in the name of the master teacher who stood for love and nothing but love. And then we get to connect with others. So we come together. We come together in sacred community. We come together in marches. We come together in demonstrations. We come together to sing. We come together to dance. It's a big one, right? Celebration. Let's go out and hit the clubs. Let's dance. And then we get to share our feelings. And in that process, as a community, we are building resilience. We are creating a new narrative. We are creating a narrative that is no longer rooted in the shame that we have absorbed from some old-fashioned understanding of what is possible. And instead, we get to stand on the precipice of what else is possible. And let me tell you, what else is possible is just huge, overflowing. Because what else is possible isn't just for me. This is the poster that was put out for that initial march in 1987. And it says, come out for yourself, come out for your friends, come out for justice. And when we combine the personal with the global, that is when true change happens. If we're just focused on my own personal story, then all I'm doing is making better for me. But when I stand in solidarity with everyone else who might even feel something like what I have experienced, then I am on the side of justice. And it's working. That's the thing. It's so powerfully working. So this is the Gallup poll from 2020, which shows that 5.6% of U.S. adults identify as LGBT. Now, I want to say that they just did a new one in 2021, and that number in 1 year shifted to 7%. 1 year moved to 7%. And you'll notice, if you look over in the right-hand corner, look at what's happened from 2014 to 2020. The number of people who are identifying themselves, who are letting go of the shame, who are letting go of the limiting story of what is possible for how I get to live my most authentic self, is shifting and growing because we have created a space for not just myself to stand in my authenticity, but for everyone else to do so as well. And they are Gen Z, those beautiful Gen Z, which 1 in 6, and this year's Gallup poll, 1 in 5 identify as LGBTQ+. Think about what that means in terms of the sea of transformation that we as a culture are undergoing. It makes my heart sing to think that there will be a day when you can stand up and say, I'm queer, I'm pan, I'm trans, whatever it is that you are, and everyone will just nod. Chris and I are television during COVID. We were watching Legacies, the vampire thing, right? Have you guys watched any of that? It's very Gen Z, and there is one character in there who is dating men and then women and then men and then women. She just sort of, Josie, just kind of flips. She just flips back and forth, and whenever she does, and nobody comments on it at all. There is zero on the fact that 1 minute she's dating a guy and the next minute she's in love with a woman. None. That, to me, speaks volumes as to how far we have actually come. So each of us is invited to step out of our smallness. And y'all know what that is. Whatever that is in your life, wherever you are playing small, doesn't have to be connected to your gender orientation or your sexual identity. Where are you playing small? Where are you letting your shame, your fear, your doubts interfere with you showing up completely? And so there's a song that I'm going to invite David Montecalvo to come on up here, and the backup singers as well, that I'm going to use as to sort of highlight what all of us are invited into. And I want to give David some love. This is his first time up here. He's a new member, first off, and he has just dove in to being a part of this community, right? So this is Out of the Darkness.
Anytime you feel your skies are falling, look above, see the bright silver lining. Listen up at your own freedom calling, calling you to a day where you're shining. Out of the darkness, ooh, ooh, into the spotlight, ooh, ooh, there's a new star. Ooh, ooh, shining so bright, ooh, ooh, out of the darkness, ooh, ooh, into the spotlight, ooh, ooh, there's a new star, ooh, ooh, shining so bright, in this place where we belong, in this place where we belong, so get up when you're down, 'cause this homecoming crown has come home. I was lost, I was found, took the long way around, but I'm home. You and me got a song that we're singing. Yes, come on. You and me got a drum that we're drumming. Listen up to the changes we're ringing. Nothing's gonna stop us from coming. Out of the darkness, ooh, ooh, into the spotlight, ooh, ooh, there's a new star, ooh, ooh, shining so bright, ooh, ooh, out of the darkness, ooh, ooh, into the spotlight, ooh, ooh, there's a new star, ooh, ooh, shining so bright. Every day's a chance, spotlight. Ooh, ooh. Follow your freedom. Ooh, ooh. It's gonna be alright.
David Montecalvo. Thank you, everybody. Out of the darkness into the spotlight. And how often do we avoid that? How often do we just want to stay in the nice, safe space where we are, right? Not willing to sort of continue to grow, to expand. And it can show up in a variety of ways, even just our Progress Pride flag, right? I had a flag that was the old flag. I had to update, I had to step out, I had to incorporate the radical changes that are always happening all around us. How open are you to that? And how open are you to stepping out? Come out wherever you are. You know, I've shared this, and I'll share it again, that my coming out as queer was less traumatic than my coming out as being spiritual. My coming out as being a spiritual person within the queer community was very challenging. Because I guess my background had been in theater, when I came out, I had a bunch of theater people who were my community, and they all were like, oh yeah, whatever. Whatever. You like women, whatever. Okay. It really wasn't a big deal. My parents had their own stuff, and that took a little bit longer for them to navigate, but they did. But when I came out as a spiritual being within my queer community, that's when I got all of the story that people usually get when they come out being queer. That's when people said to me, do I still know you? Are you the same person? I don't know how I can act with you now. And I stood in that space, and maybe because I had built that muscle by being queer and announcing that loud and proud out to the world, of being willing to stand in that uncomfortable space of people looking at you like, huh? And me saying, yes. And as they looked at me and didn't understand who I was, and we have to understand where that came from, right? Because as I said, our community is often wounded by religious teachings. So it's really a place that, like, they were looking at me thinking, oh my God, who have you become? You've become the voice that's going to call me an abomination. They didn't know what else was possible. So here's the thing. In one arena, they were perfectly capable of seeing what was possible in terms of gender identity and sexual orientation. Woohoo, blow that wide open. But in terms of spirituality, stuck in an old understanding. And it's been part of my joy to be able to share over and over and over again, I'm the same me. You can still curse around me. It's okay. We can still have a drink together. It's okay, right? Like, I'll still go out dancing. I haven't radically altered my personality because I have understood the divinity that I am. In fact, I'm more of me than I ever was before. So where in your life are you doing the same thing? Where have you opened yourself up and you see sky's the limit? And where else in your life are you stuck in an old understanding that does not have to be true? Your story is making it true. Jesus said, you are the light of the world. And I am purposely bringing in Jesus and the Bible during this talk because I know it can be triggering for people, right? Because of that wounding. But this is what Jesus said. You are the light of the world, or at least we think he said, right? Because we don't really know. But I love this idea that it's not about Jesus being the light of the world and only he is the light of the world. It's the fact that each one of us is the light of the world. And are you shining forth? Are you radiating your light? Or are you, more scripture, sticking it under a bushel? Are you hiding the thing, the most authentic thing, that if you stood in loud and proud would change your life and the world. Because that's what I believe we're all here to do. We are here to live into the fullness of our life, and we are here to literally make this a world that works for everyone. That is where we are growing towards in consciousness. Individual authenticity and global solidarity. Those are the two pieces that need to be woven together. And the LGBTQ plus community is the living demonstration of what is possible when you do that. When you stand in your individual authenticity and you stand in global solidarity. And don't get me wrong, the community wasn't, there was all sorts of inner discrimination going on against trans, again, right? We have our own stuff, and there is a willingness to grow. And I say that we need to do that even more. So where in your life can you activate your personal authenticity so that it shines forth, knowing that you are actually also in global solidarity and standing for real change and transformation? Because 250 pieces of legislation that are anti-LGBTQ+ is horrifying to me. So our work is not done. But there is so much legislation in there right now, just in the U.S., forget global, just in the U.S., that anti-voting rights. There is so much that we are being called to stand in personally and globally.